The purpose of this short video is to help us play with vectors and finding out how to determine the angle between two vectors. And you are going to create your own applet. So it's a bit exciting. And we will use this applet later in the course. And you can come back to it whenever you want. So to begin with, from our home page, please click on the GeoGebra link. And that will take us to the GeoGebra main page. Make sure you're logged in, and so you would see here your identification. And what we are doing next is scrolling down a little bit in this main page, and we are looking for the geometry app. There's all kinds of very interesting apps. Today we're gonna play just with the geometry app. Once you click on this, you get a very clean interface. You will get basically a blank canvas and a series of tools on the left side. So we're going to keep this very, very simple. Follow along. One very important thing about GeoGebra is that the last tool you have used stays in the memory. So unless you want to do something else, you keep doing the same thing. But normally we do something and we want to go back to move. So keep this in mind as we progress. So what we are going to create is two vectors, and then we're going to find the angle between them. That's really a very simple task. So in basic tools, we're going to open this section which says more. And there's all kinds of objects here that you can edit or construct or measure. And there's different variety of lines. And as we come to lines, you will notice there's segments, lines, rays, and vectors, which is what we want. So whenever you use GeoGebra in this format, all you have to do is click on the option, and GeoGebra gives you a hint. It gives us select starting point and then end point. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to select a starting point and an end point, and we have created our first vector. Pretty good. And the vector goes from A to B. We're going to create another vector, so we're going to keep the same tool, and we're going to create a different vector now at a bit of a different angle, something like this. Very good. Now we are going to come here and click on the Move tool so that we stop creating vectors. Now, this allows us to move our vectors. So we have this vector that we can move in any direction. We can change the terminal point. We can change the initial point. So that's pretty good. So what we're going to do next is to measure the angle between these two vectors. We need to make sure that their initial points match. We use that term, or we use the other terminology that is, we have the arrowheads at the end, and the beginning of the vector we call the tail. So when we measure the angle between the vectors, they both have to have the same starting point, or they can be measured what we say tail to tail. So I'm going to make this vector and move it so that the ends match. If you notice here, we have now the vectors with the same starting point. And I can move these little points here that were the initial points of the two vectors. Very well. Now I'm going to measure the angle between two vectors. So the first part that is critical is that the vectors must be tail to tail, or the initial point is the same. So now we're going to come back here to our tools. And if you notice here, we have measurement tools, and we want to measure the angle. So when we click on angle, we will see that the instruction is for us to select 3 points or 2 lines. So in our case, we're going to select the points B, then A, and then D, and that will create the angle that we're looking for. B, then click A, and then D. And you will see right away that the angle appears. Let's go to the Move tool. We can move this value a little bit. And there's the angle between our two vectors. And of course, this is dynamic software. So as soon as we move it, the angle is updated. So we created our two vectors. We have now find out the angle between them when we place them tail to tail. And that was the main goal of our first little investigation. We'll do something more in subsequent activities. For now, we can explore a couple of more things. I can click on one of my vectors, and then I have a little menu that appears here. Let's say I want to change the color, make this one blue, and then I want to come to the other vector and make it red. I can also add a label for my vector. The label exists by default in GeoGebra. We don't show them at first, but we can choose to show them. So if we click on Show Label, we see that this vector is labeled as vector U. And similarly, if we come here and show the label for this vector, is called vector V. And now we have a very nice construction of our two vectors, U and V, that make this angle of 51.5 degrees. Excellent. So that's it for today. We are going to later find out how to add these vectors, play with them. So what I need you to do next is come to GeoGebra hamburger menu and save this construction. So save it perhaps as vectors 1. You don't need to share it. You can make it private or you can share it. It doesn't really matter. And save it. So now you have these and you can come back to it whenever we want. Thanks for watching.